And for the second time, and the second time I'm covering a bio tonight, I got both of the bands that we are covering multiple times. So we have covered the Pixies on many, many different occasions up to this point. We covered Surfer Rosa from 1988. We covered Doolittle from 1989, and now we're going to cover Bossa Nova from 1990. I also believe we're going to eventually cover Trompe Le Monde, so we're going to go through the
Oh
entire
wow.
run
Oh
of the
cool.
Pixies, I believe. Yeah, all four of the albums. But probably I should cut off because I always forget to do this. And I should probably shut up and I should talk about the songs that I picked before we go in. So once again, I have to do, I think I'm going to get it right this time. But I know that you're about to listen to Anna, I believe, right now. And then I was toying with which song to put in the opening montage. What did I pick, Josh? Did I pick
Hangwire.
Hang Wire? Yes, okay, that's what I thought. So you heard Hang Wire before, now you're going to hear a little bit of Anna. I apologize. I kind of agonized this week over the choices because these were not either album, right? Did not have singles or songs
Yeah.
you'd be familiar with.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
kind of was like there were a lot of different choices of where we could go. So I apologize for the confusion on that. It was a good problem to have, though. It made me think a little bit. So, we've covered the Pixies in Bioform quite a bit, so I'll kind of play the hits right here. Pixies formed in 1986 in Boston, Massachusetts. The original band, they're still playing, by the way. In fact, I was just
Yep.
saw tickets were on sale in my area right here to go see them.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So, in terms of who's in the band right now from the original band, I think it's back up to three of the four members are back playing with the band, which is nice to see. Those three members are Black Francis or Frank Black, depends on whatever you want to call him. He's on vocals and rhythm guitar, and he's the primary songwriter, although another member of the band was not always happy about that, which we'll talk about a little bit. You've got Joey Santiago on the guitar, you've got Kim Deal on bass and vocals, and you've got David Lovering on drums. Lovering, Santiago, and Black Francis slash Frank Black are the members still in the band. Kim Deal has not been in the band for quite a while. There was a lot of acrimony with her leaving the band while this album was going on. Well, you know what? We'll save that for fun facts a little bit. In terms of what genre they're considered, I mean, the Pixies are another one of these bands that they're considered to be like 17 different genres and also be in the forefront of a genre. So it kind of depends on how you want to clarify them. Alternative rock, indie rock, college rock, those are right kind of the big three that they're often sort of placed in. I think those are relatively fair. I'd say they're kind of like nebulous terms, so I hesitate to use them because it's like, what does indie rock even mean anymore? But that's kind of where you see them sort of mentioned. In terms of who they were influenced by, once again, it's kind of exactly who you'd think. It's sort of, as we mentioned last thing, it's the Beach Boys, Beatles lineage, right, of the pop elements of what they're doing. There's some Ramones in there in terms of the punk elements, and the Sex Pistols come to mind. They often mention like the glam rock era. I don't see it as much like the T-Rex, Mark Bolan stuff. I've never truly seen that, but some other groups that they name check quite a bit. I probably should mention Velvet Underground, right? That's a
Yeah.
no-brainer one as well. But they mention X, they mention Wire, they mention the Gun Club and the Violent Femmes. Those are all bands we've covered, and I think they're all good fits. Husker Du is another one that gets brought up a lot, which I do think there's a lot of similarities in terms of their influence by who they influenced, like all of indie rock in the 90s. We could just move on from there. That's basically it's hilarious when you look at the similarity page on the different areas. It's like hundreds of bands. So I mean, I don't even think I need to go into it. Basically, if you were in a like a 90s rock band, you were influenced by them. There isn't as much lineage in today's music, I don't think, but because this sound is not as prevalent anymore. But yeah, all kinds of 90s bands. Their contemporaries were like everybody who's everybody in the early 90s, right? So obviously they influenced and were contemporaries at the same time of Nirvana. Sonic Youth is another band that they were contemporaries and influenced by. Pretty much actually all of the Seattle bands, right, could fall in that area. The Meat Puppets were another one that were both contemporaries and influenced them. Um, Dinosaur Jr., right? So those are kind of bands from there. So I won't go too far into that because the Pixies have long tendrils in terms of their influence and their influences. That's why we're going to be covering all four of their albums. As I mentioned before, they're touring now. Some fun facts: Joey Santiago and Black Francis were the original members of the group. They met while they were studying at UMass Amherst, where they were suite mates. Frank Black dropped out to go on an exchange trip to Puerto Rico. He then came back and dropped out of the university, and they worked in a warehouse together, and they started composing lyrics and guitar parts. And there you go. That was them doing the two-man show. They famously advertised for a bass player who liked both Peter, Paul, and Mary and Husker Du. And Kim Deal was famously the only respondent to that ad. And there's a lot of funny things about like Kim Deal.
They say like no chops required. Like we don't want you to have any chops.
Yes, it extended
like
basically.
That.
Yeah, we'd rather you not have chop stuff. She was the only one who responded, and she also came to the audition without a bass, which made me laugh. And she'd never played the bass before, so she responded without a bass. Never had played the bass stuff, which really is kind of remarkable when you hear the bass parts of these albums, because you're like, how the hell did she go from that to writing some of these bass parts? But anyway, that's. Here, not there. Interestingly enough, Kelly Deal, Kim Deal's sister, who eventually was in the Breeders with her, was flown into Boston to audition as the drummer for the band. And actually, Frank Black approved of that hire, but Kelly wasn't confident in her drumming, and she only wanted to play the songs that Kim wrote. And so those songs that she wanted to play became the Breeders' first album, which was released the same year as this one, and I believe we cover next week. So we're going to be going back and forth between some cross-pollination here between the two bands. David Lovering,
like,
2 weeks.
John.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks from now. Gotcha. And David Lovering ends up becoming the drummer because Kim Deal's husband had recommended him because they'd met at a wedding reception. So I thought that was interesting. And Joey Santiago actually gets credit for picking the band name Pixies. Now remember, they are not the Pixies, they're just Pixies, right? That's something that's often there. He picked it randomly from a dictionary, saying he liked how the word looked and that its definition was mischievous little elves, which he thought was a good description of them. So that is a little bit of an overview of the Pixies. If you want to find out way more about the Pixies and all of their trials and tribulations, there was a lot of strife. Famously, Frank Black disbanded the band unilaterally by calling Joey Santiago and then sending a fax to Kim Deal and David Lovering to end the band. There's a lot of other tidbits in our earlier things in later season 3, so feel free to check them out, the earlier 2 albums. I'll end it there. I believe Matt gets the first take on this one. What'd you think of this one? Very different album than the other 2, just like we said about the Cocteau Twins.
Yeah. Before I do that, I forgot we didn't do numbers, John. So your favorite part of the show. So Bossa Nova comes in at number 78 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 5 in 1990, number 433 of all time. It is their third highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind Surfer Rosa and Doolittle, which are the ones that we covered already. This album did not make Rolling Stone's list, and the Pixies are ranked number 17 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. Wow. And this was I don't think I knew any of these songs, actually, or remembered them. Now, I have seen the Pixies a couple of times, 3 times, I think, twice with Kim Deal and one with the new bassist. I forget what her name is. So I'm sure I've heard some of these songs played before, but not enough to have stuck in my mind.
So I always have struggle with her last name, the new bassist. Her first name is Paz, and then it's Lenchantin, I think, is the pronunciation.
Paz Lenchantin.
I think
that's a cool name.
Yeah, I might have. She's Argentinian. I know that. I apologize. I didn't do my homework on that specific thing because of new bios, but it's Paz, and if you go phonetically, it's Lenchantin or Lenchitin, so there you go.
Yeah. So I really like how this album starts off. They got Cecilia Ann's like a surf rock song. I'm like, I could see this is a Quentin Tarantino, like, Pulp Fiction kind of song that he would put into one of his movies. Rock music is just that riff is awesome. And it's like, that's where you get a lot of the Pixies edge there with Frank Black kind of basically just screaming, it's like, this is rock music,
Yeah.
Then they go to Valoria, which is a nice little kind of a poppier kind of song with great bass, with a great bass line up front with Kim Deal. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that she just didn't know how to play it all. That either means that the bass is really not a hard instrument to play, or like she's just that good, which is probably more the case, that she's just that talented. And yeah, this album's got good variety. It's got a lot of edge. It's got some great riffs. There's some goofier, types of songs with it. Stormy Weather kind of was just, it's almost like this. It's a weird kind of throw in there. It's like this, one of the longer songs at almost 3.5 minutes, and it's kind of just like the chorus over and over again, and it seems like it doesn't really fit, but it also kind of does, and it's probably the one that I was singing the most, because it was so, they sing it so many times, and it's just it's just that catchy. But this is another album that I like a lot of the deeper the later tracks in this record as well, which I think more and more that when I hear that, I just really like those albums when, if you don't front load everything, if you have a lot of good, deeper cuts or songs, stronger songs towards the end, it gives you something to look forward to. But I really like the combination of the Down to the Well, The Happening, and Blown Away. I think that those are just like three of my favorite songs on this. So, and I like that they do come in later, but yeah, all over the world is probably the longest song on here at 5.5 minutes, and I really like that one. That one to me sounded a little bit more like a modern, quasi grunge, quasi like alternative rock type song. Yeah, not that it's generic. I don't want to say that at all, but it just fits in that lane a little bit more, and is a little bit more of a mainstream straight ahead song than some of their other stuff, perhaps. But I really liked how that went in different directions, and the guitar solo at the end and stuff. But man, these guys are good. This is a great, again, another like the Talking Heads, or where they can just take a lot of edge and a lot of like off-putting kind of sounds at times, or discordant, off notes or whatever, and still make it really palatable and really catchy, and because there's this undertone of like this melodic feel, or just a really good bass line or a cool drum line and stuff, so they're the whole package, man. They're just it's a treat listening to all of their stuff. And I guess I don't know what my favorite is. This is one of those bands where I could definitely like go back and forth of like, because I love Doolittle and I love Surfer Rosa and I love this. So they're all great. I don't know if I have to pick a favorite here, but yeah, big thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I enjoyed this album also. It's hard to top something after coming after Doolittle. So I think that's kind of where maybe it's a slight step down from both Surfer Rosa and Doolittle, but it's still a very good album. I agree. I really like Cecilia Ann. It's like an interesting surf rock instrumental. It's not like the rest of the album, so it's like weird that it's the first track. It's kind of a one-off sound, it's not like they're doing all surf rock sounds or have other ones, but it's still really well done. And it's enjoyable to listen to, and I like their guitar sound a lot on this. I love Kim Deal's bass. I agree, like rock music then like sets the stage for this great rock sound, and then Valoria and Allison and Is She Weird, all of those are really good, strong hits for me. I got a real like Weezer vibe to this album, especially in like Valoria and Allison. There's like some distinct guitar riffs in there that sound like the same exact guitar sound that they use in Weezer. I mean, they only come a few years later, so it's entirely possible. Even the surf rock kind of retro sound that they have, and it's yeah, and it carries on through. I agree. The deeper cuts too. I like Dig for Fire a lot, and Hang Wire and Stormy Weather and Javelina. Those are all in the back half of the album, and it's all really well done, and it continues kind of like the Pixies aesthetic, and it just isn't as strong as the previous two albums. And I don't think there's any like songs on here that compare to something like Wave of Mutilation or Debaser or Here Comes Your Man, or even like Where Is My Mind or Gigantic. Those are just all, you know, top tier songs. So, and it's kind of an unfair comparison, but like it's almost like what we were saying about Matthew Sweet. It's just like it's really good, but it's not like as good as those albums. And so it's I guess it may be an unfair comparison taking it by itself. This Pixies album is really good, and I hadn't heard it before, but there's just not. It's just, what am I trying to say? It's good as a whole, but there's no like standout songs for me that are on the level of those other albums and tracks.
That's probably a good point. There's for sure on those other two records that this is missing. So I guess in that sense, those have better moments. But I don't know. I was finding difficulty having any gripes with this at all. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you guys. I actually think this is every bit as good an album as the first two albums. I like the fact that they lean into a different version of their sound. The first listen through was, I'm not going to say shocking to me, but I was caught off guard because I think of the Pixies having a sort of a brawling quality to them, right? Like they challenge you. It's a very appealing sound to me, but they put up some walls on the first two albums with things like feedback and shouting, and just there was a lot of stuff, right? That even with the beauty, it was there. Even a song like Debaser, which I love, the chorus is basically just Debaser, you know, as loud as possible, so good, like disoriented, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so there's that, and I love it. This album, on the other hand, does not have any of those barriers. This has it has very familiar elements.
You're right.
That if the first two didn't put you off, like Matt mentioned, there's a lot of surf rock on this. There's a lot of like 50s and 60s rock and roll type of sounds on this.
Yep.
There's a lot more space throughout songs, whereas the early Pixie songs, you know, it's kind of the loud quiet, right? And the loud quiet was what they said was the space, right? There are these different things. I just, for whatever reason, I don't think I would ever have used the term atmospheric for the Pixies on earlier albums, but there were songs on this that were very atmospheric. There was a run in the middle from like Valoria to Dig for Fire, which was just good song after good song, but especially that Allison, Is She Weird, and Anna. I think Anna was a real gem on this. I had never heard that song before, and I loved sort of the outer space guitar that was in it. It was almost like outer space meets Wild West type of guitar. It could have just as easily fit in an album that would be considered to be more atmospheric than the Pixies. It was almost shocking to not hear, you know, the abrasive elements to it. And I think that's why it threw me the first time. Like, do I like this as much as I like the other stuff? Because I really like the Pixies' earlier albums. And then it wasn't until I was like, I don't have to not like it. It's a different sound, and it's a choice they made, right? And that's why I was, and like at first it almost felt like you're cheating on the Pixies sound, but then you're like, I don't have to feel like I'm cheating. This is different, and it's also really good. And the second listen, I really leaned into this and liked it, and then I was like, let me listen to it a third time, just because I had space this week and stuff. And boy, the third time I really, really liked it because I knew what I was getting and I could listen to it as was. And so every time I listened to this album, it got stronger to the point where I would say I don't have a definitive favorite anymore in terms of the Pixies albums. I think it's really, to me, each of these three, depending on my mood and my day, can fit for different reasons. And I would say that, Josh, for me, some of the big songs on this album, most notably the cover of Valoria, the instrumental Cecilia Ann, Is She Weird, and Anna, Down to the Well, those can hang with any Pixie song, for my opinion. They might not be played. Javelina, also, the last song, is a really strong song. And so I kind of like the idea that you can make a greatest hits album from each of these albums, and it does add a little bit of different spice on each one. So this one gets a strong thumbs up for me. But I definitely urge you to, if you're familiar with the Pixies, but you're more in the Surfer Rosa Doolittle Pixies,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what you leaned into,
Yeah.
I would say listen to it a couple times because it is a little bit jarring that you don't get what you're expecting. And especially if you like those earlier albums, if you're anything like me, you might be suspicious of like, do I like this? And then eventually I think you might grow into, yeah, I kind of do like this, which I think is what Matt and I both, it sounds a little bit like that was your experience too, Matt.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was jarred at first or like, oh my gosh, like, because you're right, there's probably a little bit more off-putting elements to those other, or harsher elements to those other records, but I still was feeling, edge here and the Pixies style here.
There's plenty of edge. I don't want to say there's
Yeah.
no edge.
But
It's
you're
just
right,
there's
but it's-
not that. Yeah.
The feedback, or just kind of more. This is maybe a cleaner version of that to an
sands
extent.
off some of the edges, I think.
Yeah,
on some
but
of
it's
those
still,
early
but it's
albums.
still there, and it's just at the end of the day, it's just like there aren't many Pixies songs. I don't even know if there's that I've heard in this run where I've gone like, they missed it there, like that. I don't like that. I don't need to listen to that one again. They are just a really interesting band. They do so many things so well, and the things that they're able to combine and put all together and put out, it sounds better than it probably should. In the hands of other people, like it would be a horrible misstep. But they're able to thread that needle and just do so many different things in really short periods. It's like a lot of these songs are just like 2 minutes long. Like they get in, they get out,
Yep.
and they're never boring. So
One thing they don't do well though is lyrics. Their lyrics.
Oh
are
yeah, well,
the
if you don't
throwaway.
care about that, John, you can.
Not a detriment.
I did want to mention that, and famously, Black Francis has sort of used lyrics as throwaway. So that's
Yeah.
So if you're
That's
looking for
that's
lyrics,
my guy.
This is, there's songs about like UFO abductions and stuff. I said outer space. I wasn't saying it because of the content, right? Outer space is more the sound, but yes, there's and actually the song I think of as being the outer space songs aren't the ones that are about alien abduction. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, remember what was the song? Was it Gigantic that was about him? Or no, it was Where Is My Mind, right? About him just getting seeing a fish, and stuff, and it's like, okay, great.
Yeah,
So,
you tripped out or whatever.
Abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thumbs up for me.
Yeah. Thumbs
sure.
up for me too.